The topic today is transform CX Insights into a profit engine. Cool. So what's the agenda for today? The agenda is actually, I would like to go with you through a cutting technology and go through the process that takes customer feedback and helps you to really drive profit from that. I like to use one or two case studies. Actually, I'm talking about a real case study of Mel, who is a customer insights leader at a bank. But I will also show specific results from other cases, especially from Sonos, because simply I can show the data here better, right? So in any case, you can read what we talk about in my books, the CX Insight Method. You can have it on Amazon, or the Ultimate CX Insights Playbook, which goes more on the tactical level. And I also, because I'm hearing that the voice is not so good, let me plug in my microphone. So
better. Right. So there's also a course at cxai.com/CX Master. It's an online course. It's very well received, very highly rated, because there's no course on the market which has this depth. So that's the pre discussion. So let me now advance the slides. So the story is about Mel, a superwoman, as you see, but basically an insight leader or a CX leader, as you are. And typically the journey starts implementing an NPS system. That's what Mel did, yeah, collecting all those feedback, scores and verbatims. Once you have implemented that, that's great. You can measure how good you are and where you get better, if you get better. But very soon the question arises from the organization: how can we increase the NPS? So, and then what companies are doing, okay, how can we do that? I dive into the open ends, right? Read them and try to conclude what to do. There's popping up one big misunderstanding what most researchers realize. They realize that customers say, hey, they are asking, why did you rate this way? Because of the great sound for speaker, or if you ask a McDonald's restaurant customer, because of the great taste, or whatever it is. Customers are answering most often with basically something which is very closely associated with a domain, with a category. So there is a huge bias in what people are saying, because they just answer and do not have an incentive to really dig and say, hey, what's really important for me? Yeah, they just talk. It's not wrong what they say, but you cannot conclude from the frequency of topics happening to whether or not that's important or not. Yeah. So it's a fact what they say, but it's none of them is a truth in terms of that you can conclude frequency is equivalent to importance. And that's basically where there comes the realization of Mel, we need a driver analysis, right? Because we need to understand what is the impact of a topic which customer are raising, right? This realization is a key to finding out what you should do to drive NPS, right? Maybe I show you this dashboard actually. What you see here, you can go on 6ar.com and here enter demo dashboard. You arrive at a dashboard. This is a Sonos case where basically you have on the x-axis the impact. Yeah, so the most often mentioned topic is great sound quality, but the impact is rather low. Yeah, so right is positive impact, the left is negative impact. The most impactful are things like flexibility, reliability of performance, voice assistance. Or if you go to insurance, there's a case here from where you see that something which is not very often mentioned, that the person you talk with is trustworthy, honesty, reliable. Why it's not so often mentioned? Maybe it's not so often happening, right? But when it's happening, it really drives customer loyalty. You can even click on it and you see examples. So this is now multiple different languages, right? So going back to the presentation, this is what you need to do taking your customer feedback. You need to, of course, categorize the feedback, whether or not to understand how often people are saying great service, but then also have some kind of impact analysis. And that's what Mel has did. What they did is, for this impact analysis, you need to do two things. First, you need to categorize the text feedback. You can do that with conventional text analytics or with supervised deep learning. And at that time with Mel, we did a lot of comparison and found actually that only with supervised deep learning, you can achieve a quality equivalent to manual coding, but at scale. Plus, you need a driver analysis. The simplest form is a key driver analysis is a regression. And also here, if you use machine learning, and with CXAI we use causal machine learning, you actually can oftentimes double the explanation power. Explanation power is the predictive power, the R square, but also indirect causal effects through the emotionality and so forth. So maybe the next slide, it describes this. So what causal AI is doing, it's not only looking for the direct effects, which driver analysis is doing, so the direct impact towards likely to recommend, but also indirect ones. So for Sonos, for instance, we found that sound quality basically drives the sentiment. The sentiment is an emotional score based on the language. So, and what you can learn is that when people talk about great sound, they don't mean great sound. They mean, I feel great when I hear this music. Which is not a technical, not a rational statement, but an emotional one. So, and with this, yeah, you can learn and you can better also explain why people are what is happening and what drives loyalty. Yeah, but this looks a bit complicated, but basically it's under the machine room. It basically produces an impact score. Yeah. So just as visualization, this is driver analysis. It's a flat lane. It puts this flat into the room, and the steepness is your impact. But machine learning is basically flexible. Yeah, it adapts to the data, and with that, it basically really finds out how things are by not assuming overly simplistic functional relationships. So you can model nonlinearities, interactions, all those stuff, even though you haven't known them before. Right? So step one is categorization. For this we use, again, supervised machine learning. We found out that's even more reliable than manual coding. So that's what Mel did, right? So implemented CXAI, implemented such a dashboard in the company, and the story could be over, right? Everything accomplished. Of course, there's always a hook and always something to improve. And what came back from the organization is, yeah, that looks really fantastic. Now we know better on which 2 or 3 topics we really need to focus on, but what exactly should we do? Because this tool shows you the topics from the customer perspective. Yeah, it does not tell you, hey, do better marketing or do better promotion or do a training program, right? The customer simply says, hey, you are unfriendly. So there was a question, what does a survey look like to enable this view? So this, all what you have seen, builds on a simple NPS survey, which is a rating or likely to recommend from 0 to 10. And the question, why did you rate this way? Yeah, the question needs to be unconditioned. So do not split the question and ask the detractor something else and the promoters, because this, then you don't have the information anymore. If you, for instance, the promoters also may have negative things to say, right? And if you don't hear that, you don't know how important things are. So 2 simple questions, that's all what you need, right? You can always do it more complicated, no worries. Cool. So then this was a question, what exactly should we do, right? And indeed, that's what we found the biggest hurdle, yeah? The lack of buy-in. That's actually the biggest pain point for any CX leader or insight leader. Yeah, that we once did an industry survey, and people are saying, what's your number 1 pain point? Hey, to deal with a stakeholder, yeah, to adapt, to implement findings, getting internal clients to think from the customer point of view, explain CX ROI to top management, getting departments to own action fully based on insight, leadership sponsorship, so forth. So all the same, that's the biggest pain point. That's what also Mel learned. And so we tried to integrate the leadership, and also the whole organization did workshops. And these workshops, the organization learned which actions can we derive from the learnings that the CXAI tool gave us. So story could be over now, but then another question appeared. The question was, okay, now we know we want to do this, this, and this, but can the tool help us to actually to assess whether or not it will pay off. What will be the impact of my action? Okay, so we went back and implemented functionality where you basically go into the tool and you simulate changes. Yeah, what would happen with an NPS if the customer would respond differently? We can not only predict the change in NPS, we also can predict the fiscal impact. For this, we only need to know what's the fiscal value of one NPS point, right? I'll come with this in a minute. But if we can can estimate this, we can actually simulate the fiscal impact of future customer profiles, right? And that's helpful. Yeah. Now I can say, hey, when nobody anymore complains about wireless connectivity, this will be 60 million in customer lifetime value. So I can now better decide whether or not I should invest in that, right? Cool. So the question is, okay, how do I estimate what an additional NPS point brings in profit? The first is you can just ask experts, and at 6AI we have some some processes to kind of get into the first number, but actually the safest way is to do a one-off modeling. Basically, what you do is you take a past survey, basically where you have interviewed customers, and then you look how the customer improved, right? So how did this customer churned, or did he even upsell the next year, right? So what the model is doing is tries to predict the outcome of churn and upsell using everything we know about the customer. And if the NPS is relevant, it is predictive towards those outcomes in 1 year. And basically, the model tells me what the impact will be of one additional NPS point. And this modeling is very different than just comparing customer promoters against detractors. This analysis is full of spurious correlations. So if it would be my company, I would not rely on spurious correlations. Here, I will give you an example how this looks like. So here you see an NPS rating, yeah, and all the different customers as dots. What you see is, and you see basically, the x-axis is the outcome. Yeah? Did they increased in customer value, so upsell or churn? So what you see is that actually, yeah, the correlation is zero. Yeah, so higher NPS rating does not mean higher customer value, but actually it correlates highly if you differentiate between two segments. The top segment is per se answer more critical, so they have, no matter how loyal they are more answering more critical, right? So there's a bias, and that's what I mean. If we know what the customer friend, which segment he's in, or if it's a male, female, where he lives, and so forth, the more I know about the customer, I can predict whether or not the result is due to the loyalty or due to other factors, other co-founders, right? And that's what the model is doing. It debiases by using co-founder information. So that's what also at the time Sonos did. Yeah, I used this model to predict impact. In former times, where we looked just on frequency, we knew that improving sound quality brings 5 million improvement, but improving reliability of performance brings 20 million impact. Yeah. So, and with this exercise, the company decided to invest in the reliability of service. And the cool thing was that 6 months later, after they implemented the improved software, the improvements were spot on. Yeah? And this is really where you convince the top management. There was a question. If correlating a single NPS point to revenue, how do you explain the scenario where NPS declines annually, but revenue goes up? Yeah, so again, correlation is not causation. I would not draw any conclusions from correlations. Yeah, because we know that revenue has lots of drivers. Yeah, new customers, existing customers, marketing campaigns, whatever happens on the market. So if you want to explain something, you need to put all relevant causes and context information into the model. And then we can learn, we can tell you what is driving causally those outcomes. And that's what we do with causal AI, right? Is this useful? Please put in chat if I should explain further. Cool. So that's what we did, right? Also with Mel she was now able to really quantify what is the impact of improving a certain customer topic. But because we then implemented this fiscal impact feature. But lastly, there was still an open question. The open question is, you come up with initiatives, yeah, and you know, okay, this initiatives may bring more, but the other thing is some initiatives are very expensive and others not. So actually, what matters is not only the impact, it also how costly is it to make and how easy is it to execute. So impact is not enough. It's like lottery, right? There's a big impact, but there's little chance you get that, right? So that's why we implemented for Mel the scheme of a decision matrix. We have 2 dimensions: risk versus ease, and the ROI, the return, the impact we know from the simulator, right? Divided by the investment. And suddenly you have regions. You have priority projects. You have projects you should do, others you should investigate, or even you should not do, right? And maybe I'll show you this in this live environment. So basically, it looks like this, right? There is this planning feature, and you have here these just different dimensions. You simply add an initiative, say, hey, there was this reliability of performance. Let's improve software, right? Streaming software. And this is actually concerning all customers. The risk, we don't, the effect will be quite certain, yeah, kind of. How straightforward is the implementation? we exactly know what to do. The medium, right? So total investment to do this is 1 million. Yeah, in thousands. So let's put it in US dollars. So now this is somewhere here. You have a minus 100 in ROI. Why? Because we need to simulate first. We improve here, right? So now we have a positive ROI, 800%. So 8x of the investment, right? Because cost 1 million, it brings 9 million. So now we add another initiative. You can now add lots of. The other one was voice assistant. Basically, voice assistant was the biggest driver. Yeah. So marketing on voice assistant was the idea, right? To simply promote that everyone knows Sonos has a voice assistant. The effect, yeah, not so much, because we never know how good your commercials are. We know exactly not, yeah, kind of, it's a standard process. But to really get this working, you need to at least invest 10 million, yeah, which is a quite low number for a global company. So, and that's basically, okay, it's still at minus 100 ROI, because we need, of course, let's say many more people are actually, look at that. You need to come to a point where basically everyone you ask mention voice assistant, right? To be equivalent to the improved streaming software. So in a nutshell, this is a team tool where the team can come to a conclusion on evidence, not on opinion, right? And that's basically what Mel did as well. Trying to share my screen. A minute. There we go. Oh, I'm seeing questions. So first, I'm sharing my screen. And then I'm go through the questions. So that's what we did. We arrived from analysis towards a decision-making support. So, and with this tool now, the CX leader and the insight leader sits in the driver's seat of decision-making. Wonderful. So what questions do I see as well? Suppose many responses do not enter text responses. This very much depends on the domain. So for most cases, most people enter text response. Of course, you need to do it right? So if you put your open end at the end of a close-ended questionnaire, that's not going, right? So you need to put this open end directly after the NPS question, and depending on the involvement, typically get more than 50% answering, very much depending on many context factors, but that's not the case that most do not answer. So next question, do you use multiple regression to estimate the models? Nope. So that's what you can do. All right. That's a simplest first step. But as I described, we use causal machine learning, as it is the most valid methodology and most universal methodology. And leads to highest predictive power. So why should you not use something more valid? Because it is about spending millions and millions of dollars. So it should be correct, right? So there is absolutely no use in using simplistic analysis. So Mark is asking, assuming you have an understanding of buying usage road within an account, how does the system deals with B2B relationships and understands how users' feedback impacts decision making? That's a good question. So first off, NPS doesn't measure decision making, right? It measures loyalty. And what you can do is basically segment your people, right? If you know there are decision makers, there are influencers, measure that. You can even put it in one model and see whether or not the property of being a decision maker leads to certain criteria, or you can split the analysis into those two. Right. The question whether or not the loyalty drives decisions, you can have reasonable assumptions on it, or you can model that if you draw the right data from that. So I would need to ask more questions to go more depth in there. So Luis is asking, which machine learning method are we using? So we are using causal machine learning. Let me be more specific. Specifically, we are using a software called Newsroll. You can also license it by yourself at newsroll.com. And this is a causal machine learning methodology which uses so-called Bayesian neural networks, which is very different to Bayesian networks. Bayesian neural networks. It's a kind of a neural network, but it prevents overfitting and has many interesting properties. Yeah, that's a core of the methodology, but it's a causal network laying out on top of the data. All right. Cool. So again, time for more questions. Let me summarize so you can get more ideas for questions. So we went through the whole process to take your customer feedback to profit impact. Is first, of course, you need to text AI to classify what customers are saying, because only if you quantify it, you can analyze. As a second step, you need a driver analysis to understand how impactful the topics customers are raising. So the most valid methodology is called the machine learning, which we employ in CXAI. If you have that, it's very interesting to do a fiscal impact simulation. Basically, you can do that if you learn and if you know which is the impact on customer lifetime value of an additional NPS point. That you can learn by a one-off modeling exercise, or you can even put a number in, because it's still better than just guesswork, right? So that's an informed guesswork if you put do an expert judgment exercise. So, and the last thing is that you put everything in a ROI canvas, because in decision making you always consider four things. Is an action impactful? How much does it cost? Is it easy to implement? Is it risky to implement? And in this canvas, has a framework where it basically suggests what to do and what not to do. And yeah, that's basically not only the idea, but the process where the CX leader and the insight leader can use a tool he owns to guide the decision-making process. That's the whole idea. So I'm seeing more questions. Is the term loyalty same or similar to the term taste? And how much does it change in time just by itself? No, taste. Loyalty is basically the likelihood to stick with a customer, right? And it's an attitude, right? And taste is an attitude as well. But it's obviously somewhat different. So Louis asked another question: is text AI a separate app? There are many text AI apps on the market, right? Not sure if you already use one, but CX AI is a managed service where we take your data, we train a text AI, a world-class text AI we found by comparing many different ones, run it through Newsreel, machine learning, and put the results in a dashboard and update it frequently, so that we really can make sure that everything works out for the company. So we decided to do it as a managed service because actually this is an enterprise service, and enterprises they need the things right, and those text models, they need to be trained, right? Most software systems and CX softwares, they come with pre-trained models, and those pre-trained models are never as good as if you really train it to your specific case. So, and again, the question is this a good investment? I say yes. If you look at the costs CX platform has to enterprise, it's very little cost to invest in CX AI like that to have a better quality of text analytics driver and a good decision framework as a whole. Wonderful. Wonderful. So again, you can read more in our books, or can deep dive in the course 600X Masters. Or if you have very specific questions, you are invited to write me. You can even have a one-on-one if you have in-depth questions, if you want to hear my opinion on your specific case. Just reach out to frank@cxai.com. I'm happy to share my opinion.